Hi everyone, I'm Simon from Stampix and welcome to Loyalty Expert Talks, where we share insights, stories, and best practices about loyalty and customer experience across the globe. Today I'm super excited because we have Rob Chandler joining us, head of customer loyalty at Sky. So a very big name in loyalty, and I've had the pleasure to hear Rob speak at the loyalty surgery back in the days when live conferences were still normal. Rob, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm very well, thanks, Simon. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. From where are you dialing in?
I'm actually dialing in from my what now is my workstation, which is in the back garden at home in Buckinghamshire in the UK.
Okay, great. So, Rob, we're definitely going to talk about Sky and its VIP program, obviously. But before we do, you've held a number of roles in marketing and advertisement prior to joining Sky. So maybe for our listeners out there, you can give us a quick overview of your background and experience.
Yeah, of course. I suppose I'm a bit of a mongrel strategist. I've been in marketing and CRM for about 25 years now. So my background is all pretty much agency and consultancy side, from media agency into creative agencies, digital agencies, and then into management consultancy sort of environments. So Sky was actually my first trip into the world of client side. I've been very lucky to work on a huge spread of brands, from brands like Virgin Atlantic, Telstra in Australia, Commonwealth Bank in Australia, lots of financial services in the US, and other airlines, Qantas, again, Australian and global. So it's been an exciting time working with some really challenging brands.
Yeah, I can imagine. Great, thanks. So, next question is still a bit personal, Rob. When you think of the word loyalty, it's obviously a very loaded and a big term, but is there a particular brand or product in your personal life that you would say, yes, I'm loyal to that?
Yeah, look, I think there's so many, and we don't realize it. I think for me, loyalty is about emotion. So there's many produccts that I'm functionally loyal to. So I buy Domestos bleach. It's what I buy every time, just because I have to do it. Do I feel passionately loyal to that brand? No. It's just what I happen to do. Probably the brand that I feel most passionate towards is Virgin Atlantic, and based on their behaviours and their staff's behaviours over a long period of time. But one of those critical things was I was living in Australia. I lived there for about 8 years, and very sadly, my dad was taken very ill. And I needed to get back to the UK with very short notice, and it was at Christmas time, so pretty much every flight was booked out. And I spoke to a multitude of airlines, and the person at Virgin Atlantic. Now, be this them being on out on a limb, or being a culture which I think Virgin have brought to their staff, but they literally said, look, whatever happens, get yourself to the airport, be there at this time. One way or another, we'll get you on a plane, even if we have to put you in a jump seat. Now, that's pretty incredible for someone that I wasn't a particularly high member of their loyalty program. She just understood the emotion of the situation. I think I'll be forever thankful to them for that. You can
Yeah,
hear me crack up in my voice. It's such a powerful thing
I can
for
imagine.
me. It wasn't done for their business. It was done for something that I really needed, and that makes me very loyal towards them.
Talking about a act of kindness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that's the big thing with loyalty. So loyalty is the outcome of doing the right thing and looking after people. It's the same in our friendship groups. It's the same in business. It's the same in customer loyalty. It's all about doing the right thing and being consistent with our behaviors.
So I guess the main takeaway from your story is that there's the bleach brand where it's more like a behavioral loyalty versus attitudinal loyalty, right? In the
Yeah,
brand.
absolutely. And look, the Bleach brand would see me, and if they've got the customer data, they'll see me as probably one of their most loyal customers on the planet. I wouldn't ever regard myself as loyal to them. It's just happens that that's just what I do. Whereas Virgin Atlantic, I'm definitely an advocate for their brand, and feel passionately towards them and the culture that they've created. So they're very different sorts of environment.
Yeah. Rob, so making the bridge back to Sky, you and your team managed, and I quote, to shift the brand from least likely to recognize customer loyalty among competitors to actually a number one position across all those core measures. So that's very impressive. So no doubt there are a number of initiatives that led to that change, but is there like one all-time favorite loyalty initiative that you can pick out?
I'll pick out a favourite initiative and the things that we were doing within the loyalty program, but I think that the things that led to that level of success was a cultural shift in the business, right? A massive cultural shift in the business from one that was all about customer volume and numbers to a business that was very much about customer value. And that led to a shift in treatment of customers. The single biggest thing that they took on board, and probably the most costly thing, was getting to a point where every customer would get the same deal. So if something was put on offer at a low price for new customers, it would always be available for existing customers. Now that one cost a lot of money to do it, but it was a shift in culture of actually we've got to do the right thing by people. So there was a multitude of things, and especially through COVID, that Sky did, and I wasn't directly involved in some of these things, but for example, making sure that people got refunds on sport, where they were paying for things that wasn't actually going on 18 months ago, and making sure that the customer was being treated well, making sure they couldn't get disconnected. All of those things were really important in terms of the sort of core customer service and what people expect from a large organization. Some of the great things that I was involved in that were really exciting, we managed to get a team of netball players and that they were a young team, so they were about 8 years old, in front of the English netball team, and spending a day with them and being behind the scenes at a netball match and meeting the crew, meeting the coaches, and that netball team very sweetly sent us a signed jersey of their netball team, which actually sat, I believe it was against or next to a signed jersey from Messi in Sky Sports. So, that sort of sense of the customer being in the organisation, those girls sent it as a thanks, but it's a lovely thing and a great reminder of what we were all doing, all the things that we were doing for Sky. So that was one of them. There's so many, people fighting with Anthony Joshua, all kinds of wondrous things.
Yeah, I saw that clip with Anthony Joshua. It was very impressive, and it gave me goosebumps actually watching it.
Yeah, no, it was a good one. We were so lucky. The girl that won that experience, she was just fabulous. She was absolutely passionate. She was actually at, I think it was Leeds University, and she was actually preparing for her first university bout. So she was quite into boxing, and she had just no idea that it was AJ, and he was an absolute hero to her. And he's just a lovely guy to work with. So we were super lucky.
It's a great bar time story, telling that you knocked out Anthony Joshua. Great. So one of the things I always remember, Rob, from your keynotes is that at Sky you made the shift from rewarding customers based on how long they've been with you, tenure, longevity, as opposed to mere spending.
Yeah.
Also, one of the great contributions that you worked on at Sky, and is that sort of unique in the telco market in the UK?
Yeah, look, I think it's unique in the telco market. I've also not seen it definitely in Europe from any other loyalty program, apart from in Sky Germany and now Sky Italy as well. Sky's issue was a pretty unique one. Well, not a unique one. It's all about whether or not customers feel valued rather than value for money. So a lot of loyalty programs are set up on how do you create a perception of greater value for money for customers. For Sky, it was all about how do we generate this sort of sense of people feeling like they're cared for, emotionally cared for. And for us, and there's a huge amount of research that backs that. You can only do that based on time. If you could buy your way to the top tier of a loyalty program, then it's not really we care for everybody. So where we wanted to go with it was make sure that we recognize customers for their longevity. Now, clearly, that's very connected with Sky's business model anyway. Obviously, the longer you're with them on a subscription business, the greater value generally anyway. So it was incredibly powerful for us. It was quite a hard one to sell in initially because it's not, most loyalty programs are sort of linked so directly to hard metrics. Mm-hmm. Ours was linked to a lot of soft metrics that led to hard metrics. So we were very much measured on churn reduction, appeal of the brand, and all of those things. But actually, we were only really focused on a couple of very soft metrics. Recognizes loyalty, we knew contributed in a big way to that value, and helping customers feel special. They were the sort of the two key metrics that we were working to.
And what about Net Promoter Score? How does that play a role?
So Net Promoter Score is used within Sky to measure frontline engagement. Now, Net Promoter Score, the people will love or hate. I'll be honest. For us, it was too unstable to connect it directly to churn, because generally what happens is it's overpowered by your most recent interaction. And therefore you don't necessarily see things rationally. It'll be literally, it's great at judging that immediate experience straight after it, but it's not great for judging a broader balanced view, in my view. We actually had something called ITS, which was a similar structure, but it was actually based around a question of intention to stay or intention to leave over a 12-month period. Now that as a metric for us, it feels very similar, but for us it was far more stable and more predictive of propensity to churn. So I think Net Promoter Score is valuable, but and it depends on the organization. For us, it wasn't highly correlated with churn stats.
I guess it's a bit of a stronger sentiment to say I'm actually advocating for this brand than saying I'm about to stay or to leave. It's just, I can imagine it's a bit less fluctuating.
Yeah, it's a great one for amplification. So understanding amplification and promoters is, I absolutely buy into the overall idealism of it. I think where I struggle with it is as I say, using it as a sort of a stable metric over the longer term. But I'm sure there's someone out there that's far more educated than I am on it that will put me right.
Yeah, there's a lot of research on it, and the reason I specifically asked is we have a startup in loyalty as well, so we have a model that we use when we're talking to customers to see where they are in loyalty and how we can help them best. So it would be great to share it with you and get your take on it. So
yeah, I'd love to
share my screen quickly and guide you through. So basically what we did is we took two metrics, Net Promoter Score on the one hand, and then engagement, whether that's engagement, the number of people that participate in the loyalty program or their activity rate, that's to be defined. And we've got like 4 clusters that you're no doubt familiar with when we look at as NPS increases and also the level of participation increases. We can start on the left bottom side, inertial loyalty, moving to mercenary loyalty, true loyalty, and then cult loyalty. Obviously, those are the examples that we're all familiar with, the Starbucks, Apples, Nikes, etc. of the world. So Sky, being a telco, traditionally is classified here under mercenary loyalty, where customers are switching based on getting the best deal. They're a bit paid for their loyalty through coupons, cashbacks, and discounts. Do you reckon that's still the case, or is the telco market shifting towards more the emotional side?
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? So telco, it depends on the area of the business. So I think on the telco side, it's still very much a utility, and I think price is still much a massive driver. So mobile or even in connectivity. In connectivity, I think also there's the whole thing, especially in the UK, about your stability of your service or things going wrong, which often can be down to your Wi-Fi and not necessarily your external provider. But essentially that connectivity and it just working properly is enough to drive quite a lot of people. So I guess to a certain degree you're into inertia and mercenary on that area. TV is different. We kind of have a very different relationship with our set-top box or our TV provider. Just because what we're watching tends to be far more emotional, if you see what I mean. It tends to, the excitement, the fact of you tend to throw something at your TV if things are going wrong, and having watched football over the recent weeks, and rugby, you can often find yourself wanting to throw something at the TV when it's not working in your favor. So you have this passionate relationship, which is very different to the internet, if that makes sense, or to mobile or whatever it may be. But I would say, there's still a lot going on, definitely, and you're absolutely right. Retail, telco, energy, airlines, that sort of functional loyalty, I suppose, as we were describing earlier with the Domestos example.
Yeah, indeed. And
it's interesting. Yeah, I like. It's this first time I've seen this model, and it's I like it. I like the inertia loyalty. I love the mercenary true loyalty. Cult loyalty is interesting.
Yeah, it's It's interesting because what we see is many of the customers where we work with, for example, staying in Telco Orange here in the local market in Belgium, they've actually got 53% of their total database have installed the Thank You app. So it's a reward program. So I think that's massive to have such a high participation rate. And it has contributed to their NPS on the same hand. And so their whole reward program is designed to work here at the interface between mercenary and true loyalty.
Yeah. Is that still a wrapping of discounts or coupons though? Do you see what I mean? In terms of those rewards, I'm thinking out loud, but is that it's a different positioning, but it's still giving you essentially a discount in a different shape, is it?
It is, of course. And they've made the shift from, let's say, mobile data and extra phone minutes. So like owned rewards or industry-specific rewards to the more personalized emotional rewards, and that's proven to work for them. So is that also a trend that you see in the UK? In terms of switching towards the experiences?
Experiences, without doubt, experiences is so powerful. So within VIP, we had both experiences and product rewards. Product rewards were liked, but the experiences, far outweighed it in terms of the emotional connection with the brand. And I think it's a really good way of connecting people to the brand's core purpose. And any organization, I think a lot of people think, oh well, Sky's in TV and sport and there's lots of things that you could do with people, but even for a lot of people, the trip to the factory, the understanding and learning about the product that's been made, they're experiences that people won't forget. So I think every brand can create and generate its own sort of sense of experience that connects them with the purpose of the brand.
Yeah.
And that's really where you get into that true loyalty, cult loyalty. It's where you can really, I think your cult loyalty is really interesting, is where you really buy into the brand purpose, right? That's, and you almost want to brand yourself with it, and you do see people, definitely used to see people with things like the Apple symbol shaved into the back of their head. Or whatever it may be. Nike's sort of at the same level, and what they've done, especially around Black Lives Matter, is absolutely incredible in terms of connecting people with their true purpose.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And typically at these conferences, everybody's talking about emotional loyalty, surprise and delight. Is there some campaign that comes to mind or initiative? We've mentioned the Anthony Joshua example, but is there anything else in terms of the rewards that you offered at Sky that you'd like to?
From Sky Days, lots of there were things where we surprised people. They were fantastic. So for example, the AJ event, we promised people that they would get to go training with AJ's team. They had no idea AJ was there, and actually on his Instagram earlier on in the day, he'd actually been telling people that he was overseas. So there's no way they had a clue that AJ would have been there on that day. So to get that sort of sense of surprise, that sense of excitement out of it was incredible, and to see people's faces. I think anything that influences people's lives, or changes their day for a minute, for an hour, whatever it may be, brings a smile to their face. All of those things are incredibly powerful in generating loyalty. And going back to my own experience with Virgin Islands, I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So look, we did hundreds of thousands of those things, and I think the things that most surprise you, and I think for every brand, it can be the smallest things. So for one of the events and experiences we created was cinema tickets, essentially, right? There were preview screenings, private screenings for VIPs, but they were all over the country. We did millions of people attending these each year. And we got this lovely email from a guy in Liverpool that had recently lost his job, had not had the greatest of times, and that was putting a lot of pressure on him, on his family, on his kids. And the email he sent us was very emotional, and it just sort of said, look, it gave us all an escape and allowed the kids to be kids and allowed me to just give them something for once, and we really appreciate it. Now that cost us all of about £4. Do you know what I mean? And that had such a big impact on that guy's life. And I think that's really important. That's the role we play as brand leaders and things.
It's very powerful, but at the same time, from a business or a CFO perspective, it's, I guess, hard to justify spending millions on rewards that are if I understood correctly, completely for free for
Yeah.
your members, right?
It was at the beginning. So and anyone that's sat in the commercial space on a loyalty program always knows that the first few years is somewhat nerve-wracking, because essentially your costs hockey stick if you're having any success in bringing people on, and your benefits don't start coming through until at least you're going through a number of purchase cycles. In terms of the hard benefits, we were really lucky. We saw a huge amount of benefit from these experiences, and they were very commercially viable for us. So we were able to literally get to the point of, I think it was for every 60 people we could get to an experience, overall we'd save one from leaving the organization. And then you look at that against your retention costs and everything else, you know, you suddenly realize that you can pretty much afford to do it. And I think that was the powerful thing. We also saw that, and the reason for things like the film, the AJ film, was that just other people hearing about people having incredible experiences has a knock-on effect for your brand, both in terms of retention, but also in terms of the appeal of the brand beyond that. So it's working really closely with your finance teams to work out how to commercially measure it. And I think what we tend to do as marketeers is we tend to shy away from really wanting to have a proper conversation. I think finance want to enable you to do great stuff, but they also need to be your conscience. So just having really good teammates, and I was lucky enough to have that on our finance team, within the Sky and commercial team.
That's great to hear. And so the AJ example again, the power of that is obviously that people are going to talk about it, right?
Absolutely.
Word of mouth and conversation driving is also part of it, not just the cost for that one person to knock AJ out.
Yeah, and therefore you have to look at the measures across that, and that's how we measured everything. So if you look at the hashtag SkyVIP on Instagram, you'll see, you know, from the smallest of things that we gave people, all the way through to the biggest, you'll get loads of positive customer interaction, which is hugely needed for a brand as big as Sky.
Yeah.
Where often they use those channels to complain that their bill's gone up or their service isn't working or something's gone wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, talking about that practical element. So if you're sharing these rewards across millions of customers potentially, logistically, but also operationally, that has quite a lot of work and a big challenge. How does a brand like Sky does that? What's the approach? You work with a preferred partner, technology partners, also rewards, fulfillments? Do you do it with your own team? So what's the strategy there?
It's a great question, and I would say a combination of all of those things. I think one of the key things was getting up and running is your first sort of key thing, and often you'll rely on partners, great partners, to get that speed of implementation. And scale up. You've then got the flex to scale, and get to large volumes. So for Sky VIP, we went from 0 members to 1 million in less than 3 months. So you're starting to talk about quite a lot of weight and traffic and all of those things, let alone all the rewards we needed to get going to. And then from 1 million in 3 months, we were at 2 million within 6, and we were at 6 million within 18 months. So it was very fast in terms of that scale up. So often working with a really good external resource gives you that speed and that capacity to flex. We also, the challenge, I guess, of doing it through external resources, that integration with internal systems and making sure that it feels a core part of the customer experience rather than ending up in a separate app and a separate this, and you spend your entire life trying to get people to engage with the program overall. So there's always a point of, right, how do you make sure you in-house the core parts of it, and how do you make sure you integrate anything that's external? So we worked, as so, with some great partners. Stretch Communications was one. They supplied all of our experiences and managed all the ticketing and the prize draws, but their technology folded straight into the back end of what was a core Sky app that existed already. And likewise, just working with other agency partners. But I think, yeah, working with experts, especially in those early days, people that you really trust, critical.
Yeah, great answer. And Rob, I think there's so much more we could talk about, but as promised, we would keep it short and sweet. So I guess it's a wrap. Thanks a lot, Rob, and have a nice day.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and stay safe and well.
Yes, bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.